Welcome back to Bay Area Focus. We all have a hero we look up to, and for author James Beran, his father was that hero and the greatest man he ever knew. His book, The Biggest Short Guy, is a tribute to his father and the legacy he left behind. James Beran, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. He would have said it's an act of reckless courage on your part to have me on your show.
I don't think so, but your father sounded like such an amazing man.
You know, he truly was. Hopefully every boy's father is his hero, right?
Yeah.
But when you get older in life and you start to understand more and appreciate things more, my father redefined greatness for me. He really was the greatest person at so many facets than anyone I ever met, and I've had the opportunity to meet some incredible people.
So what inspired you to write a book about him?
Well, the first thing that inspired the book was of all the amazing things he did, and as busy as he was, he found time every night he was away from my mother for 22 years to write her a letter by hand. But better than that, the letters got, long story short, he took them back to the office. They got compulated by his secretaries, and my mother would get all the letters from the prior year on her birthday. Oh. And they put them into books. And this is just one book. This is 1977.
Okay, so this is a very thick book here.
This is 1 year.
Okay.
So there's all kinds of things. And the books, like him, they grew. They get things in them besides just the letter. They would get letters from other people and stuff. And coming to do this show, I ran across a letter in here that's incredible from someone else. It was from a 1977 UCLA business school student who was having reconsiderations of his life path of being an accountant. I guess my father gave a speech at UCLA, and the guy writes and said, "You inspired me so much that I think I'm going to stick with it." So I followed it up yesterday. He is now, 40 years later, he is the Associate Chief Accountant at the Securities Exchange Commission.
Wow.
And he's an adjunct professor at Georgetown Law teaching accounting, and he sent me an email and said, "Yeah, your father kept me on the path."
That's amazing.
It's crazy, and there's so many of these in these books.
Your father not only inspired you, but inspired others, obviously.
Constantly,
and in
yes.
researching all of this and talking to people like this man that you just talked to, how does that make you feel about your dad?
Well, I kind of, look, he was my dad, and we do dad and son things, right? But again, when I look at things holistically, he's like, to me, he's like a human being of Usain Bolt as a runner. I mean, how do you do this? But you know, it's all within us. It really is. My dad was not an exceptional. He was a bright guy, but he didn't have a giant IQ. I said there's 10 life lessons in the book. They're not spelled out, but one of them is there's no substitute for hard work. Okay, his life story: born during the Depression. 18 months old, his father killed and murdered his brother-in-law, almost killed my grandmother, living in a little dirt town, cotton patch town, pick cotton, goes to war, gets on a troop ship headed for the Battle of Bulge, gets sunk, survives it. Great stories in the book about the little old French lady. You should, just amazing life lessons. And his life lessons, he would tell you, just through his life lessons, we all have the capability of achieving personal greatness. I'm not talking about great fame or anything. Leading a really joyful life. Sure. And contributing to a great society. And
a full life. And it seems like your father really did live a full life. He actually met a lot of famous people, including presidents. Yeah,
he not met. He was friends with them. You know, my father was great counsel, and I always say he was counsel to from the boy in the mailroom to presidents.
And that was him with President Ronald Reagan, and now with President Jimmy Carter.
Yeah, he went to. President Carter did these voting verifications in South American countries and stuff, and he almost got killed on one of those trips. Another great story in the book.
It's a great story. Now, you talked about he serving in World War II, and he told you a lot of stories about that? Well,
he didn't tell me many. He never talked about the war. He had nightmares about the war his whole life, but he's one of these guys who he didn't want to talk about it. But the greatest story for me occurred when right after the war was over. We were still in Europe. When the boys would go out to the bars at night, he met a little old lady who was having a glass of wine at a cafe, and he sat down with her, and they became friends over how much time I don't know. The night it came to leave, they've got to leave at some point in time, weeks, months later. And he said, "Walter, I want you to do 3 things for me: get married and have a joyful life. The second thing I want you to do is I want you to have a garden in your home. And if you can't afford a garden, I want you to repair to the garden of your mind. And the third thing I want you to do is when you have a glass of wine like we do all the time, I want you to leave a little bit in the bottom for me, okay? Because someday I'm going to come see you and I'm going to look across the room to the day he died. He never drank all his wine.
That's amazing.
I tell that story to people, and I have lots of friends now. It's not for the little French lady, but for someone they love. They always leave a little bit, and you'll know they have thought it.
I love that story. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show and telling us your story, and your dad sounds amazing. And for more information on James Beran and his book, just log on to thebiggestshortguy.com. Well, that's it for the show this week, but we will be back with more Bay Area Focus next week. Have a great day.